So I'm Grant from Maker's Vlog and free energy devices. If you see my last one, which said, are free energy devices real? No, they're not. But in this one, I thought I would elaborate a bit more. So there are two types that I'm aware of free energy devices. There are the ones that are based off perpetual motion machines. So I'd say, for sake of argument, a fan that's weighted in such a way that you spin it, and the weight then causes it to go round. It generates more energy on its downstroke than it wastes on its upstroke. So it means it can, in theory, keep going forever. And the theory behind those kinds of free energy devices, if you have something like that that just continuously spins forever, well, if you stick a generator on that, then you've got free energy, right? No. The second type of free energy device is sort of cosmic energy, is the way some of them put it. It's usually closely linked to aliens and shit and all that guff. I'm not saying aliens don't exist, but I highly doubt they're sending us free energy. So with a lot of these things, there is a grain of truth to some of these. The free energy motor, the perpetual motion machine, if you got something that could do that, then yes, that would work. But we can't. We don't have the technology. At the minute, making something that spins forever, once with an initial starting motion, doesn't work at the minute. If you're aware of the laws of thermodynamics, the first law in particular, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, it can only change forms. Now, the second law states that the energy put into a device, I'm paraphrasing this a bit, if you want to read the whole thing, and if you need an insomnia cure, I recommend it. The second law essentially states that if you put, the amount of energy that you put into a device will remain the same unless other factors intervene. So it will not increase, it cannot increase, it has to stay the same. Now that's in a perfect world with no resistances, no air, no nothing. It would have to do this in a vacuum with a bearing that had no resistance, which is impossible. Everything has resistance of some shape or form. So whenever you spin that, a lot of that energy is then dissipated as heat. Mostly, there are other losses, but heat would be the main one. As it's spinning round, the bearing has friction, and that friction generates heat. That energy is lost through heat. So that's where that initially falls down. Now, the first rule is you can't generate or you cannot create energy. If you had one of these motion machines that had enough energy to get over its own friction and could continually spin, but also had enough momentum to get over the friction of the generator that you attach to it, because it's going to have its own friction and other losses, in that case, you're creating energy. That energy is not there from the motion. It's being created by fucking magic, essentially, because as it's going through its motions, it's working at an efficiency over 100%, which just isn't fucking possible at the minute with the technology that we have. So that's the grain of truth with that one. With the RF ones, or the cosmic rays one, that actually can work, and it's not exactly cosmic rays. So in the air around us, there is RF, radio frequency, noise, radiation, just everywhere, constantly. It's always there. And if you have a device that's able to lift this energy, you can lift it and you can use it. Certainly, there is. I believe it was one of the very first radio receivers devices. I'm talking years and years, possibly even before they had valves, where you had a strip of wire that was your antenna and an earpiece, and then the receiver circuit, and that was it. It did not need power because it used the signal that it was receiving as the power to listen to the headphone. It went straight through. Is that free energy? No, because we're still expending energy to make that signal, and it is inefficient. So somewhere there was a massive transmitter that was blasting out the RF, blasting out the radio waves that then were received by that device. So it's not free. It's still taking energy that was made somewhere else and then pumped into this device. Now, there are watches today that are coming out, or I think maybe have been out for a year or so, that have this sort of technology built into them where they lift just background radiation, RF, from the air, energy that it can harness and use to power a battery in the watch. It's perfectly acceptable. That works. That is, yeah, happy days. But it's still not free. And people confuse this. They go, oh, well, the energy's already there, so it must be free. And the energy's already there because something's put it there. In most cases, especially nowadays with the amount of devices that we have that are all transmitting, we've put that energy there. If you go back before we had any sort of radio communication, most of the radiation was from the sun. So that's free, sort of. But it's not free in the sense of they think about it. And again, the best way to harvest the solar power is through solar panels, not lifting the RF out of the air with an antenna. A good analogy that I had for these ones as to why they're not quite correct is actually my watch is one of those ones that's powered by movement. It has a ball bearing in it that goes around as I move, and that generates power and it powers a capacitor. That's how that works. That isn't free. There's probably a proper name for it, but I like to call it passive power. It's powering it from something that's already happening and you're just using the byproduct of it to give it more power. So in this case, I move my arms a lot anyway, especially when I'm talking. So my arm's moving anyway, so if I put a watch on it that's powered by my movement, it's then powered by the movement that I was doing regardless. Is that free? Still no, because the watch adds weight to my hand or to my arm. And so I have to use a bit more energy than what I would normally to move that arm around to generate the power that I need. It's not much, but I still have to eat and sleep and drink to fuel my body so that I can then do that. It's still not free. It's just taking advantage of a power or something that was already going to happen to generate power. Another good example of this is Stirling engines. If you don't know what they are, there is a channel called Lindy Beige, and I'll put a link in the description for him, where he explains them, and it's definitely well worth a watch. But they work essentially off a heat differential. So there's two plates, bottom plate, top plate, and then there is a piston, a foam, usually foam-like material of some shape or form, for the small ones anyway, piston. And what it does, you either heat one plate and cool the other. Doesn't really matter which way around you do it. And the air that gets hotter obviously tries to rise, and as it cools, it sinks. So that motion then moves the piston, and it moves a flywheel, which then can be used to generate energy. That is a great kind of engine because it's very good for passive power. So if you think of a server room that's belching out a lot of heat and they have to cool that, well, if they're going to be taking that heat from somewhere and put it somewhere else, if you had a Stirling engine that was maybe had one plate to the outside where it was cool, and you put that hot air into the other room, well, then you're using that heat that's generated from the servers that's quite wasteful and using it to generate a bit more power. Now, it's never more, because again, you would need an engine that had an efficiency of over 100%, which just isn't happening. But it does help alleviate the carbon footprint, for want of a better word. It helps make it a bit more even of an exchange. You're not actually wasting that heat energy. There are also some companies that use this they just use it as heating for their offices. They just have the hot air is extracted, cold air is brought in, and the hot air is distributed for heating. That works perfectly acceptable. That is another form, because a lot of people think of energy as, okay, electricity. You need to have electricity. You need to use everything, but heat and other byproducts like that can still be used. They're just not electricity. You just need to be clever with the way you're using them. But that's it for free energy devices. They're bollocks, And don't worry, if you're a flat earther, I have a video coming out for all you ones out there. I need to wait on getting an HF rig because I can prove that the earth is round. Well, I'm sure you will come up with some way of saying actually it works like this, but fuck yous.